Hi everyone, I just want to run through an example of multi-attribute value scores and how to calculate them with an example. So here we have the Jones-Wood example. Let me read the question. A local authority has to decide on the location of a new waste disposal facility, and 5 sites are currently being considered: Inston Common, Jones-Wood, Petterton, Red Beach and Treeham Valley. So they're trying to decide where to have this waste disposal facility. In order to help them choose between the sites, the managers involved in the decision arranged for a decision analyst like yourselves to attend one of their meetings. He first got the managers to consider the factors which they thought were relevant to the decision, and after some debate, 4 factors were identified. 1, the visual impact of the site on the local scenery. 2, the ease with which the waste could be transported to the site. 3, the risk to the use of the site, that it would lead to contamination of the local environment, and 4, the cost of developing the site. The decision analyst then asked the managers to assign scores to the sites to show how well they performed on each of the first 3 attributes. The scores they eventually agreed on are shown below, together with the estimated cost of developing each site. Note that 0 represents the worst or least preferred, and 100 the best or most preferred score on an attribute. In the case of risk, therefore, a score of 100 means that a site is the least risky. Note that the cost of developing the site attribute is provided as a ratio scale, and we will need to convert these to preference scores before we can calculate a multi-attribute score. So here we have the sites, Inston Common, Jones-Wood and so on, and here we have the attributes and the preference scores. So you can see here Inston Common, 100 for visual impact, so the most preferred in terms of the visual impact, and Treeham Valley 0, so the least preferred site in terms of visual impact. In terms of ease of transport, we have Inston Common as the least preferred and Red Beach as the most preferred, and so on. So you can see those preference scores there. Now let's move on. The decision analyst, together with the managers, determined the weights that were appropriate for each of the attributes. The weights they agreed on are provided below. So we have visual impact 0.27, ease of transport 0.23, risk 0.33 and cost 0.17. So these are kind of a weighting in terms of their importance. Next, the decision analyst also converted the actual dollar cost for developing the site into an equivalent preference scores on an interval scale, and these are presented below. So have a look at these. So we saw the costs for Inston Common 35 million, Jones-Wood 25 million and so on. But we need to convert these to preference scores on an interval scale so that we can calculate our multi-attribute value score. Now these are given in this example, but we do need to know how we could calculate these preference scores if we were only given the costs. Take a look, Inston Common 35 million. So this is the highest cost. So this is the least preferred. This gets a 0. Then have a look at 12 million here, the lowest cost. Red Beach has that score, and so that gets 100 in terms of being, the most preferred. But then we need to figure out how to calculate these scores in the middle. What we do is we find the range. So we calculate, it's the highest value, take the lowest value, 35, take 12, gives us 23. So the range here is 23. So then we look at each value relative to 35 million and 23. So 20 take 35 gives us 15, and then if we go 15 divided by 23, this gives us our 65 over here. So that's how we calculate that score. Similarly, 25 take 35 minus 10, so if we just go 10 divided by 23 gives us 43. And 78 here again is 35 take 17, so 18 divided by 23 gives us a 78 here. So that's how those preference scores are calculated. So now the question, which site should the local authority decide on? So taking into account all the preference scores, the weighting and so on, we need to calculate a multi-attribute value score. So I'll just go across to my Excel spreadsheet where I've done this, and you can see I've put in this spreadsheet the different attributes: visual impact, ease of transport, risk and costs, and then I've put the weightings that were given, Please note, if these weightings don't add up to 100, these ones do. You can see the sum's 1 or 100. We need to recalibrate these so that they do. And they need to be decimals in this way. So if they are given as percentages, we need to put them into decimals. If they don't add up to 100, we need to recalibrate so they do. So we have these weightings, then we have the sites across here, and then we have the preference scores that were given, and then the preference scores that we calculated for cost. And now multi-attribute value score brings all those together. So if I calculate this one for instant common, you can see my formula here. What I've done is the weight times the preference score plus this weight times this plus this times this plus this times this gives us 46.8. Here for JonesWood, you can see I've done exactly the same, and for all the sites. The JonesWood one I've expanded out here, and in fact it is the best option because it has the highest multi-attribute value score of 61.81, and no other one is very close to that. So that's the highest one here, and that's the one we would go with. I hope that all makes sense.